Yeah, shout out to all my friends from Athletes in Action. That's who we are. So, yeah, like Fitz said, my name is Lexie. I am graduating this May. And so I was just given the privilege to just share my heart and just to talk to you guys just about something that I've just really dealt with these 4 years and something that I've really learned. And I definitely have to quote AA on this, and that they're just really good about just talking about this topic. And so, Kate, you can go ahead and put up the first slide. And so, my topic tonight is going to be about identity. And the world just has a very interesting way of just saying how we have to portray ourselves. We basically always have to do something in order to gain worth, to be valued, or to be important. And so that's why my talk is titled "Do Something." And so no matter who you are, you're always thinking, oh my gosh, I have to do this, I have to do that, and I'll be popular, I'll be loved, that'll be my worth. And unfortunately, it's always a dead-end pursuit. You're always striving for that one thing, and you never get it because things can come up. And so tonight, I hope I can encourage you guys to just put your identity in something that just goes beyond what we do, and putting your identity in something that is so much more secure. And so tonight, we're going to look in Matthew 19, and we're going to look at the rich young ruler and see where he put his identity. And I'm sure you can figure out by the title. But yeah, so you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Kate. Can I get a volunteer to read these verses, 16 through 19? Go ahead, Taylor.
Just then a man came up to Jesus and asked, "Teacher, what good thing must I do to get eternal life?" "Why do you ask about what is good?" Jesus replied. "There is only one who is good. If you want to enter life, keep the commandments." "Which ones?" he inquired. Jesus replied, "You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not give false testimony. Honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself."
Great, thank you. And so here, just looking at verse 16, you can see that if you read deeper, that this man, he really only cares about what he has to do. He basically just goes up to Jesus and say, "Hey Jesus, I want to go to heaven, like what do I got to do?" And so it basically shows that he's thinking that he's self-sufficient and that he can go to heaven based on just the works that he can do. And he also actually kisses up to Jesus by saying good, and Jesus says in verse 17, "There is only one who is good, and that is God the Father." And so Jesus replies, "Well, you need to keep these commandments." And these commandments listed actually have to deal with relationships. And just as a side note, it's really interesting that CRU, one of their second motto is to love others, love God and love others. And so yeah, Jesus says that yes, you just need to keep these commandments. But the conversation doesn't stop there. And so if you look at these next verses, if someone can read verses 20 through 22. Go ahead. Yeah.
"All these I have kept," the young man said. "What do I still lack?" Jesus answered, "If you want to be perfect, go, sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." When the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had great wealth.
Thanks. And so here, Jesus basically reveals the rich young ruler's true heart. In verse 20, it says, "All these I have kept," and I highly doubt that he kept every single one of those perfectly. And so he doesn't admit to his own sin. And then secondly, Jesus is saying that you need to give your possessions to the poor and put your treasure in heaven. And Jesus isn't saying that salvation is based on giving to the poor or giving a certain amount of money, but that it's putting God first in your life. And so it's a call to faith. And it's this true faith that the rich young ruler lacked. And then you can see his reaction in verse 22 and how he put his worth in his possessions. And this version said he went away sad. Some other versions said he was grieving. And so you could see that his possessions were just really a stumbling block for him and just were really prohibiting him from putting his faith in God. He really did not want to give up those things for God. And so I was reading this and I was thinking, how can I convey this in a more personal manner to you guys, or to apply it? And so just one thing about me is I'm a visual person, and so I like just like examples and things in front of me. And so I'm going to kind of like demonstrate just 3 different identities that I'm sure most of you guys can relate to one, if not all of them, and just how you can base your worth in that specific identity. And so the first identity is a college student. And so I'm kind of just representing a college student right now, like scarves are kind of in this season for girls. I thought I wear a scarf, t-shirts and jeans. Yeah, so college student. Yeah, and so as a college student, you could base your worth in your grades. Like, oh my gosh, like I have to get an A, like I have to have perfect grades, and then me being an Asian, like the Asian F is a B, so like everyone got GPA, like I have to have the highest GPA. I have to always be focused, always be studying. And then being a college student could go one of 2 ways. You could also be into partying, like, oh my gosh, like I have to be at the best parties like all the time, like I have to know where those are, like that's where my identity is, like all about the college life and just being popular. So that's one identity that maybe you can relate to. And the second one. The second one is an athlete. And so, of course, I'm on the gymnastics team, so I'm wearing rugby gymnastics, and then just have a baseball hat to represent just other sports in general. But yeah, so being an athlete, your worth is based on your performance. It's having a great practice, you feel good, and then if you have a bad one, you carry it with you throughout the entire day, and it brings you completely down. Your worth could also be in your playing time, and of course you have to win all the time, and if you lose, like, your identity is gone. Maybe you're also just striving to just be the MVP, or to be famous, to become a pro athlete. And so that's just another identity that you can place your worth in. And then this third identity, it might be more specific, and for me, especially since I'm graduating. Is a worker. So when you graduate, or even for those that, maybe you're sophomores and juniors, and so you're just thinking about your job, you could place your money, or you could place your worth in money, and so it's just money, money, money. Like, I have to get the highest paycheck. Like, that is my goal. That is where my identity lies. I have to have an impressive job, to impress my friends, impress my family. Maybe your goal is just to become the boss or CEO of your company, or maybe just to be in the upper class. And so that's where your identity be. And so just thinking about these, think about which one pertains to you. And so putting your faith in those, like I said, relating back to the rich young ruler, Jesus is saying, give up all of your possessions and come follow me. And so with these identities, like, what happens if you put your worth in those things and an obstacle comes up? So being a college student, what if you do get a B, or you fail a class? You're no longer a straight A student. Where has your identity gone? With an athlete, maybe you're taken out of lineup. Maybe you lose the game. Maybe you get injured. Maybe your senior year, you have an injury in which you don't even get to compete your senior year. Where's your identity then? Just being a senior, like, you want to compete. It's your last year. And so what happens when you can't even compete at all? And then as a worker, just maybe you get a pay cut. Maybe you lose your job. Or maybe you just don't make it to that upper class. And so if your identity is in those things, what happens? Do you have that, dead end pursuit? Is your life lost? And so if you go ahead to the next slide, and we see just what Jesus says to his disciples, and hopefully I can encourage you guys here. But can somebody read verses 23 through 26? Go ahead, Ben.
Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Truly I tell you, it is hard for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." When the disciples heard this, they were greatly astonished and asked, "Who then can be saved?" Jesus looked at them and said, "With man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible."
Thanks. And so here, Jesus is basically breaking just the cultural context that was known during this time. People thought that the rich would automatically get into heaven because they could tithe the most and pay the most, and so they would automatically gain favor by God with God and go into heaven. And Jesus breaks that notion in saying that you can't get in through merit or good works or a certain number of things you do. Like, you can't get into heaven that way. And then verse 25 is just showing that this is a parable that Jesus was telling the disciples, and it shows that they got it, and that man can't get into heaven alone, but it is through God. And so just going back to the rich young ruler, he's saying that the ruler had to put his identity alone in Jesus Christ and in nothing else. And then if you also look at Galatians 2:20 really fast, if someone can just read this.